What if when you woke up this morning, you realized your entire past life had been just one dream?
You're one node in a network of 7.5 billion nodes. That network is interwoven with countless other networks all over.
You can say some words, and it can cause heaven or hell on earth.
To find others like me and help them become the heroes of their own lives.
Join us. Together we will find more power.
Join us. We are GodXP.
We are GodXP. Level up your spirit.
Together we will find more power. And I'm Anthony Polanco.
Okay, welcome to the GodXP Spiritual Fitness Podcast. I am Anthony Polanco, your host. I'm hoping that you're doing well wherever you are. I am very excited about this guest we have today, Miss Janie Jurkovich. She's the author of 3 books, including Single and 60. She's retired from real estate, and now she's living a life encouraging women to lead their best lives. She publishes a lot of articles online for free. I've read a few of them, and they are brilliant, very motivational, and she has an email newsletter. I really recommend you subscribe. You can keep updated on her latest books, her upcoming courses, and other news. And just very excited to have her. She's going to share just her philosophies and perspectives, and I couldn't be more grateful to have her. Miss Janie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the great intro, and
I tried.
That's great.
So I'm very excited. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. I'm just really fascinated by your story and how you're able to, pick up a new life. And I feel like this is what the show's all about, is just, at different times in our lives, we kind of have existential dead ends, and it's time to move on. And it's like the Phoenix, it's time to be born again, and, same life, same timeline, but a new identity. And so I'm fascinated by your story, and I would just love to hear more about, that origin story, your superhero start, the opening scene, how the moment of transformation.
Well, I would say I've had several moments. My first awakening, I would say, would be when my marriage of 35 years dissolved, and I was a mess. And that's when I wrote my first books to encourage women to live their best life. Single and 60 is one of them, because I was in my 60s when I got a divorce. And the first one was Live the Life You Have Imagined, because I was determined to figure out how to fix my life. Because basically I was a workaholic. I had 3 jobs. We were in debt. My husband at the time wasn't working, and it was a downward spiral. And once he left, that was a wake-up call, because it was like, damn, I'm not living the rest of my life like this. There's got to be something. Mm-hmm. So I dug deep, and I found out how to improve my life. And that's why I wrote the books, to tell people the simple thing. It's really amazingly simple what you have to do to turn your life around. Mm-hmm. And then Single and 60 was more to show that anybody can do it. I live on property, and so there's a lot of stuff to do, and I had to figure out how to fix things and still get to work and try to make some sales. So that's what that was about. But what I didn't know is that on my quest, I would have another awakening, a spiritual awakening, and that was quite a surprise, because I barely went to church when I was a kid. And even though, I'd been to church, Christian church, but I just wasn't, like, it didn't resonate with me. The lessons, what they teach, the general philosophy there is okay, but it seemed way too complicated. And it seemed rather judgmental. And I tried going to different churches, after my husband left, and, trying to meet people, but it just didn't, no place felt like home. And since then, I found out that happens to a lot of people. Like, they were maybe raised Catholic, but they don't like those types of rules. It doesn't suit them. It doesn't seem right. It just doesn't feel like a good fit. So what happened to me is basically I had a spiritual awakening, and it happened in increments. So I didn't know where it was leading. I just knew it was hell of a lot better than where I'd been. So I just kept saying, well, it feels good, I'm going to go with it. Like, I don't care about being right. As I figure out life, I figure out about having fun and having joy. And basically, what happened is I was starting my spiritual path. I didn't really know what that meant. I developed a habit of sitting quietly and listening for guidance. And I call that my spirit guides. And I had never heard of such a thing. So I found one spiritual friend who told me, oh, those are your spirit guides. And then later I Googled it and I've read books and stuff about it. Everybody has spirit guides and they are there to help us. So that's one of the first things you can do is learn how to be quiet and tap into your spirit guides, because you can ask them anything and they are not allowed to help you unless you ask. So that's really important. I ask a lot of questions. So that made my spiritual growth really fast. I was on a fast track. And
Wow.
and so I was putzing along and trying, my life has improved immensely. And I dug myself out of debt and I was able to keep my home and figure out how to have vacations and not work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I just keep growing and growing and learning more and more and tapping into more and more wisdom. So I finally had to own up to the fact that I am what I call a spirit medium, that I can connect to beings in another dimension. So it could be someone that's passed away, or like a loved one, or talk to God or Jesus or your spirit guides or ascended masters. Some people talk to angels. You can whoever you want to, depending on what your questions are. But I found it very insightful, and I don't do this for entertainment, although it is entertaining. I do it because it has brought me such peace and joy and happiness and understanding. But I realized that at some point that my mission is like the most important thing, and that my connection with the divine or God, however people look at it, that's the most important thing, because that's what keeps you centered. That's what keeps you happy and fulfilled. And it's kind of like a northern star to keep you on track. So you remember, that you're a valuable human being and that you're here to learn lessons, and you try to remember. So you treat people with kindness, and then it's not your job to judge them, that's reserved for God. And it's really interesting, because if you start living that way, your whole life changes, because the people you interact with, the way they treat you changes. And then it just kind of spirals, and it spirals in a good way, not in a negative way.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, I love that.
So it's kind of a process. And I think that, when they say life is a journey, it truly is. And so it's a process where we just keep trying to get better and better. It's important for all of us that are on the spiritual path to be like a light for other people and show them what our happiness looks like, and maybe answer questions. How do we get that way? Or, what was your trick? One thing we don't realize, I talked to a couple of people I call it the soul realm, that passed away. And I asked them about why did they die? And I was shocked, because I'm pretty naive, but they said things like, well, nobody loved me, nobody cared, there wasn't any reason to go on. And I was like, whoa, people die from that? I've heard of it in babies, they call it failure to thrive, but I didn't know like grown ass adults in their 60s that would happen. But it was like, well, nobody would notice if they were here or not. So it's really important to reach out to people and do things like invite them to your holiday meal, or call them up and check on them every once in a while, or say something encouraging, because you might be literally the only one doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't it's hard to buck up all the time and be happy. Everybody needs a little bit of love, a little bit of encouragement to keep going. Think of it like a plant. You gotta give it some sunshine, and you got to give it some water. Your other people, they got to have a little bit of care and attention too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think not enough people think about what's going to happen to their soul when they die. And I think the the quaking moments of your death, you know, the echoing sentiment of your spirit in your last moments, you know, it has so much to do with the way that you perceive your life, you know, and who's to say that those aren't your echoing sentiments in the next life, you know? So
Right. If you don't resolve something, you just keep bringing it back.
mhm.
I mean, that's, I've read that and, you know, in articles and stuff, but I totally, yeah, I totally get that. Because, you know, I've got a big mission and it's expensive to publish books and travel and try to build a platform. And I finally said, well, I'm going to quit real estate and let God figure it out. He wants me to do this. Let God do the finances. And things have really, everything's worked out perfect. It not the way you might think. You know, the finances come and go, and then in there it's really a tumultuous path and very unusual, and a
Mhm.
lot of testing. Like for instance, I got audited by the IRS, and they said I owed like $100,000, and I'm like, yikes, I don't have that kind of money. But it all worked out. So like, and it was all a lesson in, I feel it was all a lesson in trust and trusting God. And because I could have been like freaked out and said, oh, I'm going to go broke and then, you know, sell things and move and, you know, go live in an apartment and just be so fraught with worry. Well, I didn't have to do any of that. I just stood strong and, well, if something needs to be corrected, it'll be corrected and we'll figure it out and it'll just keep, you know, it'll all be fine. And man, people really need to catch that lesson, because that is a really hard one. What happens is, and you see this with, if you think about it, if you haven't done it, you've probably seen it in other people. Something bad happens, either they get sick or it's a big money worry, and they focus on it and they focus on it and they focus on it, and all they get is more of the same.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's honestly, I believe it all has to do with vibration, and you're going to attract more of what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting. Everything has its own magnetic pull, you know.
it really does. And if people doubt it, I'd say observe something, or take a few moments a day and be grateful and thankful, and try to have a more positive mindset, and then start seeing how your life changes, because it will. And the converse will happen too. If you want to spend all your time complaining and bitching, and yeah, you see how that goes, and you'll be saying, well, that ain't working for me.
Yeah, and so back to that first question of like you said that you got a burst of intuition in the beginning, and then over the years you've been able to grow that intuition so that you can access deeper levels of understanding. So how did you get that first one, and how can people get that first burst
Okay.
of intuition and then start to pursue it?
Well, what happened to me is like within 2 weeks or a month before my husband left, I started reading a book on intuition, just because I never did anything fun for myself. And I said, I just want to read this because I'm interested.
Mhm.
And so that book on intuition taught me, first of all, it set up a habit, which is really important, a habit of every day reading this book for a few minutes in the morning. And, you know, when that's the best time, because you're most relaxed and your brain waves are at the right place. I didn't learn that until later. But anyway, I made a habit of it. And the book told me things like, just sit outside and look at the clouds and relax and breathe. And so basically you learn how to let your worries float away. Because if you're a workaholic, you've always got a to-do list, and it's hard to make that chatter stop. So that book helped me to learn to relax. And then, so I was getting in a meditation habit. I didn't know it about meditation and what it was, or you could call it mindfulness or being reflective. But I started doing that, and then I would sit and ponder questions, and I'd ask, well, I wonder, at the time I was trying to figure out what steps I had to take to live my best life or to improve it. Well, what do I need to do? What's the most important thing that I need to do? And so I'd be sitting there, and then I would start hearing guidance. And then I picked up, and it just kept getting better and better. So some days I would spend like 20 minutes, and some days I would be like really messed up, and I'd have to do that for a couple of hours.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of time. But my my staff, my team said, well, you need to tell people how you did this. So I told them what I did, and we honed it down to a printed sheet that explains the steps that you do. And we call it the Connect to Transform process. And people can go to my spiritual website and download that for free. It's the website is thenewIammovement.com. And if you put /transform, you can get the PDF immediately. And then you'll get on an email list. So a few days later, you'll get a video that shows what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can explain how to do it. It's really not that hard. Like, you could take courses on this kind of stuff. I found out later, but everybody needs to develop their own practice, but this is a pretty simple one.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to explain it kind of briefly, or do I just want people to go to the site?
Yeah, you could explain it. How would you consider it, like a personal development process?
I would consider it a process where you just learn how to relax so that you can connect. And then once you connect to the other realm, then it changes you. So it transforms you.
So it's like intuition development.
Yes, that's what it is. So what you do, and I'm not going to really do the whole thing, but I'll explain it. So what you do is you sit in a comfortable place. You don't have to sit like you're meditating, because man, I can't even sit like that, even in yoga class. So you just sit somewhere comfortable and shut your eyes, and you take deep breaths, and you kind of shut your eyes and imagine that the breath is starting like at your tailbone, and you breathe through your nose really deep, and then you hold it for 1 or 2 seconds, and then you blow it out. I do it over the front of me. I've since found out there's a thing called the straw method. Was like you blowing like you're using a straw.
Oh, right. I've seen that.
But it's like, I had never heard of that. So you do that 3 times, and you do it very slowly. So what'll happen is you will feel your blood pressures calm down immediately.
Mm.
And if you're really high strung, like I used to be, you might have to do it 4 times. But it trains your body to relax. So I use it to go to sleep. Like if you have a busy day and you've got a lot of stuff going on and you need to wind down, but you don't have enough time to read a book or do something relaxing, then you just do the 3 deep breaths. So you do that 3 times, and you breathe in real deep, blow it out, pause, then do it again and do it again. So then when you've done that 3 times, then you just keep your eyes shut. And if you want to, if that works for you, it's less distracting. That's why I recommend it. So then you envision some sort of scene outside that is pleasing to you. Like a lot of people, it's the ocean, because that's real calming, the tides going in and out. But if it's a desert or the mountains or a river or a forest or whatever, just imagine that, and think about that while you're doing the breathing, and it helps you to calm you. I believe it helps to calm you a little bit more. And then you need to set your intention that you want to connect, and whatever, if you want to connect to your spirit guides, or if you want to connect to God or Jesus, or maybe a departed loved one, just set your intention and say, I would like to connect to whatever. And then just ask your question. Like if you want to know, say you had a grandfather that died, or ran away, or they got a divorce from the grandmother, but you never met either one of them, and you wanted to know why. You would just say, I want to connect to so-and-so, and then ask your question, and then just kind of be quiet, and you'll probably hear something. And you might not hear anything the first time, but what I think happens is you have to be at the right brain wave, or the right vibration, so that you can connect.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not relaxed enough, it's not going to work. Like, but the more you do this, the better you'll get. I mean, I did it for about a month, and then I could do it in public. I remember one time I did it, I was waiting to get my oil changed, and I was at the dealer getting it done, and I was like, wow, and it's pretty noisy in there. And then I can do it when I'm driving, so while I'm even doing other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you do get better. I mean, you don't need to be able to do it that good. You just want to be able to do it quietly in your own home and get the answers that you need so you feel better.
It's
And so
amazing.
that's a really, people could do that. So you can make, I mean, why take forever? Why go to seminars for, over and over? And you can just stay home and do it. Like,
Mhm.
just keep working on yourself.
Was there any moment in your childhood that you felt like this, or was this like a completely new paradigm for
It's
you?
a completely new paradigm. No, I
Wow.
never even, I mean, I do remember watching psychics on TV, and uh, not so much as a child, but as a young adult, and thinking, wow, that's really cool. I didn't ever really think I could do it, or that it was normal, or that anybody could do it. But now I'm finding out, a lot of this stuff, um, there's a lot more people that know how to do this. They just don't say anything.
Right.
Like for instance, on the downloading the book. So the first book, I got a download that told me the main steps in the book about how to live the life you imagined. But I didn't tell anybody because I was like, they're going to think I'm wacko, right? And one time I was being interviewed and it slipped out, and the ladies that were interviewing me, they're both religious, so they didn't miss a beat. For them, it was normal, but for me, it was like really a big deal. But then, since I've been more open about telling people that, and especially the new I Am document, because that's like practically word for word for 100 chapters. A lot of people that I've met, like at conferences and stuff, and they'll give me their book or something, and they'll say, oh yeah, this book was a download, or I was told to write this book, or I'm going to be writing another one, and I was told. And it was like, but they're not owning it. They're not standing up in front of people and saying, oh yeah, it was a download. But I have also researched it, because I mean, I'd heard I have of course read Esther Hicks' book, Ask and It Is Given. That's the second book I read, and I've researched it. But so there are people that connect to ascended masters in another realm and spread the wisdom, but it's just not it's not quite so well known.
That's amazing.
I think everything in life is a process, and the sooner we embrace it and not look at mistakes as bad, but look at them as growth experiences and challenges. And that's how, we tried that and now we know it doesn't work. And so get brave and have some confidence and then try the next thing.
That's it.
That's the only way you're going to make great advances, because every mistake just gets you closer to where what your final destination is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just this lifetime. You can't just wait it out, because you'll have to keep coming back and doing it again and again.
Exactly. Yeah. That concept in itself was really hard for me to grasp. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have, except for I had so many visions about past lives.
Mhm.
And then I even had people come up to me and say, I think we knew each other in a past life. And so I'd ask my guides and I'd find out, yeah, that was true.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
I
that's
couldn't
amazing.
understand why I felt like certain girlfriends, like I felt closer to, and that was it. We played some part in each other's lives earlier. I think I can't emphasize enough that what Esther Hicks teaches is that we all have an internal guidance system, and it's based on feelings, and we need to really pay attention to that, because
Mhm.
the sooner you can tap into your feelings and use it to gauge things, boy, you're really you're ahead of the game. Like a lot of people will say, well, I have a gut feeling that this isn't going to work, or I shouldn't do this, or I have a gut feeling I should. Well, that is because that's your internal guidance system, and our creator made that so to help us. So why not use it?
Absolutely. That's it. That's the essence of spiritual fitness, it's like just tapping into that intuition and cultivating the intuition and allowing that to navigate you from this place forever, all the way back home.
Right.
So that's fascinating. I love that. I love that people can come into your life and remind you of the actual soul journey that you're on, and
Right.
I think people try to run from fate by waiting it out and letting society dictate their outcomes, and like you said, you can end up on your dying day and die with all that regret. And there's
Mhm.
a consequence to dying with regret. It's not like there's no consequence to dying with regret. So I think a lot of people just don't ask themselves the question of what is going to happen when I die. What
Right.
is, what is going to happen to this soul of mine when this is all over.
Right. I'm not, and you have to cultivate that and build your confidence and get to where you're not worried about what other people think. And my thing now is I'm not worried about making a mistake. I'm worried about living my best life. I just want to make sure I do the very best I can.
Yes.
Because those are, that's one of the things that we're here to learn. And that's what God or your higher power expects, is for us to do our best. There's no thing about, well, you have to be perfect or you're worthless. It's all about do your best. And not to judge other people. They're on their own journey. And then one of the main, well, I would say it is the main thing that we are here to learn, is how we are all connected. All the people, the planet, everything in the environment, the animals and all that, we're all connected. And a lot of people don't realize that, but it only takes a little bit of thought, and you can prove it to yourself.
Yeah, I think it almost requires a dead end in life in order to finally reflect in that way.
Right, because if your life is perfect, then that's all you know. But then when you have the not so great times, then you go, man, this sucks. How do I get out of here?
Yeah, it's the veil of comfort that we put up that keeps us from asking the questions about what the truth is.
That familiarity. Yeah, I learned that people will, I didn't realize this, but like people will stay in a negative, bad situation just because it's familiar, because they're so afraid to go outside. But what happens is once you break away and you go outside that area where outside your comfort zone just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. And then eventually you're like, oh, it's limitless. Like I can do anything.
Yeah. And another thing is, I think we choose certain pain because we're comfortable with that pain.
Yes.
And we're afraid of the pain of the comfort zone. Like, I don't want to push past that barrier of pain, but the pain of having sore muscles from exercising is much better than the pain from being sick, And
that's a good analogy, because that's exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like people will be afraid of speaking in public, and they'll just like be overwhelmed with fear. But if they push hard and maybe practice, do some preparation, and then and maybe just speak to 5 friends in an informal way, and then the next time 25, and then before you know it, they could speak to 500 people and not blink an eye. You have to figure, you just keep growing it and growing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
we set our own limits. That's, as humans, that's one of our biggest mistakes, or things that we could do better, is that we set limitations. And a lot of it's learned in our upbringing, and a lot of it we put on ourselves. Like, well, let's just be safe. Like entrepreneurs, that's a great example. Well, just go get a government job and then you get a regular paycheck, but that doesn't really feed my soul. And then but if you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to have money coming in, and you might lose everything. And yeah, it's back to that thing where at the end of your life, are you going, well, I should have made a company out of that XYZ thing that I thought was so neat, or
Yeah,
going to live with the regret. I'd rather try it and blow it than not try it at all.
exactly. I think that ultimately you have to consider your fate, and until you consider your fate, you'll always run from it. But ultimately, whether your fate is to fail or to succeed, you still want to go through that door before it's too late and find out what you could have been,
Right. It's an exciting journey. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear. It's beautiful to hear some from another person's perspective about the spiritual journey. And it's also great to hear you say that you believe that anyone can have this journey, because that's my commission, is to help people realize that as well. And it's just great to hear another person, another light worker just say, hey, I'm in this with you. We're both trying to help people realize what we realized that helped us
Mhm.
Emerge from the illusion and start to live a life of contribution and fulfillment, and that's what we want for
Right.
others.
And it's interesting that you say that, because the more you realize it and embrace the idea that it's a mission, and we each have our own part in the mission, but we need to rely on each other. It's going to take all of us. I mean, this is a big deal. And the earth is, I mean, it's ripe for it. COVID tried to give people a lesson in it, and for those that were paying attention, they got it, and the ones that didn't they're still struggling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a wake-up call to spend more time doing the things that are important, and spend time with your families, and eat healthy, and have more exercise, and be kinder, and all those sorts of things. And maybe go within, if you've lost your job, and figure out how you can make a contribution. There's lots and lots of light workers, and it's going to take every one of us to lift the consciousness of mankind.
And so, it's so important to encourage people to pursue the truth in themselves, and to that end, we believe that when someone awakens to their spiritual reality, they start to live a life that is self-actualized.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why do people start to live a life of fulfillment and contribution once they have a spiritual awakening?
Well, I think they've figured out what's inside of them all along, and that's that we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to follow our guidance system, and not necessarily the one of society.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, for me, I did what society said. I went to college, I got married, I had kids, I devoted myself to them, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
when does mommy get to have some fun, right? But once you start saying, I'm not going to live life the way society says, and I'm not going to follow or believe those limiting beliefs. I'm going to go within, and I'm going to do what feels good for me, and taking care of my mind and my body, and getting enough sleep, and making a type of environment that I'm comfortable in. All those things really feed in, and then you see how much happy you are, and then you can start, once you take care of yourself, then you can say, oh, well, what can I do to help other people?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think it comes about, because we start realizing, it's not just about us. First, it's all about everybody else, and for women anyway, especially older women. First, it's about everybody else, and then when that's over with, it's like, I got to take care of me. And then once you take care of yourself, then you can go back out to the rest of the world and make a contribution, a better contribution, and be a better mother, a better spouse, a better worker, a better friend, a better daughter, whatever, better grandmother, whatever. But you really got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's learning how to tap in and pay attention. Like a lot of people, let's say they don't get enough sleep, and they are busy, even if they're not working, they're doing other stuff, and then they're not paying attention. And I learned early on, in fact, this used to happen when I was a workaholic, and I ignored it. So what would happen is, if I stayed up late, I'd start getting a sore throat. But that was my body telling me, hey girl, you need to go to bed.
Right.
And so now, and then what would happen then in those days is, I would stay up late, and I'd keep doing checkbooks or whatever, something else, trying to get work done. But it's a futile effort when you don't have enough sleep. And then the next day, I'd have a cold. So now, if I'm overdoing something and I start feeling a little bit sick, I go to bed. And if I'm doing something and I'm starting to feel anxious and kind of like in a bad mood, then I do something like go for a walk outside, listen to some positive music or something,
Mm-hmm.
and change my mood. And so I'm a lot more in tune with my body and my happiness level. So
Yeah.
people need to do that, because they're guiding you to, your body is guiding you. And once you learn how to tap in and pay more attention to your body, then you can live a better life.
And the rising tide, right? Like
Yeah.
it starts to improve your life in every way.
Right. And then you'll be more, when you get more rest and you're in a happier mood, then maybe you'll be more open to listening to certain podcasts or reading certain books, or you have enough time to watch a documentary on something, or maybe you'll spend more time making, healthy food. So it compounds. But
Yeah.
if you don't open up and pay attention, I mean, all the clues are there, but most people are just, they're asleep. They're driving the car and they're not awake.
Yeah.
So once you wake up and you start tuning into all this, and you tune into your body and what you need, and then you tune into the people around you and keep going and going, and then you can make a real contribution to being here.
Amen. Indeed. So 10 years from now, everything's gone exactly the way you envisioned it. What is your campaign? What is your mission? What has happened and what is happening 10 years from today?
Well, in 10 years, I will be 77, almost 78. And I hope I'm not working this hard then. I don't want to. A few hours a day would be good. Well, by then I would envision that I have all 3 discourses, all 3 volumes of the new I Am document published, and it's be nice if something in there got to be a New York Times bestseller instead of just an Amazon #1 bestseller. That's a pretty big feat, but I'm putting it out there. And I have several other books that are in the works. I would like to get them published, and I would really like to have Single and 60 be like a movie on Netflix or something like that. And I have another book that I wrote that I think should be a full-length movie, but I got to get the book published and then work on getting it made into a movie. But I think that using media is a great way to show people how to live a better life, because it's sometimes people think the spiritual journey is all going to be like textbook, but it's not. You learn a lot more by doing. So watching movies or videos or a series or something, you can learn the lessons. So that to that end, I have put a lot of things on YouTube, snippets from the new I Am document, and also from other things. But if you go to YouTube and go to Janie J Soul Connector, you can watch those, and they're like short, a minute or two, so you can get a gist of it, of what kind of things I'm teaching. But I'm hoping that in 10 years the word will be out, and that I have the books published and movies and things like that, and that I just maybe can travel and speak in a few places, help others along their journeys, because it's really interesting doing the channeling. Like I would like to do that. I call it soul connecting or being a spirit medium, but I would like to do that in public and show people how easy it is, and maybe help them get answers to certain questions, like family dynamics and that kind of thing, or too, you can ask to speak to Akashic record keeper, and you can find out about the soul contracts that people make when they come here. I never thought of asking. I heard of that, and I've done that a couple times. Wow. And that's really interesting. So you can find out what yours are or other people.
Wow.
And apparently we don't just have one contract. They want us to be busy little bees, so we have lots of contracts.
That's amazing.
That's what I thought. So I was like, well, what's the contract for this and what's the contract for that? I want to make sure I didn't make some kind of contract I don't want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I had a near-death experience when I was 19, I was in a grisly car crash and my soul left my body. And
oh my gosh,
what my out-of-body experience was a few spirits exchanging my contract. And then I came back a couple hours later. And I've to this day, 11 years later, still don't know what that was. I saw it, and then that was it.
Yeah, I have heard that there's ways to change your contract. So apparently they did that for you.
I had a 19-year-old life, and then started a new contract.
Well, yeah, you might want to tap in and ask your own Akashic, I can't even say it right, record keepers to
Yeah,
tell you what
I'm
your
inspired.
contract is.
I'm inspired to do that.
Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed talking.
It's
to
been
you.
wonderful. One last thing, Janie, if you had one piece of advice that you could leave our listener with before they go about how to get the most out of their life, about how to make the most of their intuition and their soul journey here, what would it be?
I would say to go within, because I believe all the answers are within us. We just have to learn how to tap in. And if they want to get the Connect to Transform process, that'd be a good place to start, or work on developing their own process. But we don't need to go through life thinking all the answers are out there. All the answers are in here. And we can connect to them and we can find them out.
Amen. That's amazing. I really appreciate you joining us on the GodXP podcast, Janie. This has been wonderful. We'll definitely have you back again. Everyone, make sure you check out Connect to Transform, the new IamMovement.com, and Janie on social media everywhere.
Okay, thank you.
Processing things up here, but I also think, like we call it,
for example, intrusive.
processing things up here, but I also think, like we call it,
for example, intrusive.
Like they were maybe